The Israeli military says it's intercepted many of the Iranian drones launched towards Israel. It announced that citizens are no longer required to stay near protected spaces nationwide. This follows wide-scale Israeli airstrikes on nuclear and military sites across Iran. Iranian state media have shown these pictures of the aftermath of strikes in Tehran, saying the attack damaged residential buildings and led to civilian deaths. The Israeli military says 200 of its jets hit about 100 targets in the capital and other Iranian cities, and that the attack is still ongoing. Iran called the attack, quote, a declaration of war, and said there would be no limits to its response. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu confirmed the military operation in a video address.
Moments ago, Israel launched Operation Rising Lion, a targeted military operation to roll back the Iranian threat to Israel's very survival. This operation will continue for as many days as it takes to remove this threat. We struck at the heart of Iran's nuclear weaponization program. We targeted Iran's main enrichment facility in Natanz. We targeted Iran's leading nuclear scientists working on the Iranian bomb.
For the latest from Israel, let's bring in DW correspondent Emily Gordine, who joins us from Jerusalem. So, Emily, we're hearing reports that retaliation from Iran has begun. What more can you tell us?
Well, as we speak, we understand that Israel is intercepting some 100 drones that were launched by Iran in retaliation to Israeli strikes this morning. It also seems that Israel could be getting help here from the Jordanians. The Jordanian military has announced that it's intercepted several missiles and drones this morning. It didn't specify where they were coming from, but it wouldn't be the first time that Jordan assisted Israel in its defense efforts. Now, why is all of this happening? Well, this morning, Israel launched a wave of attacks on Iran, hitting nuclear facilities, specifically the uranium enrichment site in Natanz in central Iran, which an IDF spokesperson has said was severely damaged in these strikes. Now, of course, that is difficult for us to verify here. But these strikes also killed several top military leaders, commanders in Iran. Iran is now moving quickly to replenish these ranks. We also understand that women and children were killed in these strikes, according to Iran. And of course, the Iranian leaders have announced retaliation to these strikes. And we are seeing the beginning of them now.
Well, we've heard from the Israeli government that this military operation against Iran would continue for days. How are Israeli civilians preparing?
That's right. I mean, the Israeli government has made it very clear that Iran has taken steps in the past few weeks and months, really, that are seen in Israel as a concrete danger to its existence, specifically steps in furthering its nuclear program that is seen as a threat. And now Israelis have been on high alert ever since this morning. The Home Front Command has loosened its recommendations to a degree, saying that people don't have to be necessarily close to a shelter, which could signify that some of these drones that were launched from Iran were in fact intercepted. And at the same time, Israelis have been told to, stock up on supplies. We've seen people flock to supermarkets to go shopping for whatever's to come in the next few days. Airports have been closed, schools have been closed, hospitals have moved underground in Israel. So people are on high alert, and at the same time, what we're also seeing is that Israelis do strongly support what is happening right now. I mean, you see Iran as an existential threat, like I just said, and they certainly think that now is some kind there's a window of some kind of operational opportunity, if you want, given that Hezbollah, which is seen as a proxy of Iran, was severely weakened, and also military facilities in Syria were also decimated since the fall of the Assad regime, but also during the war previously. And now sort of the path for strikes on Iran is fairly clear. That's at least how it's perceived in Israel. And certainly many think that it is high time to address this issue that's been in the back of people's minds for a long time. And many certainly don't want to see another surprise attack, as they witnessed on October 7th, 2023, when Hamas attacked Israel and killed over 1,200 people and capturing 250 more, many of whom still remain in Gaza.
Thank you so much for that, Emily. That was DW's Emily Gordine reporting for us from Jerusalem. We appreciate it. Well, as we've reported, Israel's strikes targeted not only Iran's nuclear sites, but also military leaders and nuclear scientists in residential areas. Earlier, I asked DW's Iran expert Theresa Tropper what she's been hearing from people in Tehran.
Yeah, that's true, Mariana. These strikes hit buildings in northern Tehran, where mostly the upper class and rich people live. So it's perfectly credible that these senior Iranian officials and nuclear scientists had their houses and flats over there. But these are also densely populated areas of Iran's capital, and the pictures and videos we're seeing published on social media now make it kind of hard to believe that there are no civilian casualties as well. And many people in Tehran and also elsewhere in Iran will not mourn the death of these senior commanders of the military and especially of the Revolutionary Guards, because after all, it's these people that have also been arresting and killing Iranians inside Iran in the last years. But attacks by a foreign state on residential areas, killing fellow Iranians, could be a different story. And it's very important to know that Iranians are basically defenseless if this conflict escalates any further, because Israelis can rely on their government and their military to protect them. They have the Iron Dome, they have strong allies in the region that want to protect them. Iran does not have all of that. It doesn't have like an Iron Dome. It doesn't have allies anymore, or at least not powerful allies, because Israel has severely weakened all of them in the past years. And more importantly, maybe even Iranians know that the Islamic Republic might not even want to protect them that much, because the Islamic Republic has a notoriously bad track record when it comes to protecting its citizens. So many people know it's mainly its own survival the Islamic Republic is interested in.
And now Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has called this Operation Rising Lion. What's the significance of that title?
Well, the lion is one of the most enduring and most powerful signs for both Iran's national identity and also for its opposition movement. So I cannot imagine that this choice of name is a coincidence. I mean, the lion and sun emblem, it's called the Sirot al-Shid in Iran, dates back to pre-Islamic times, but it later became the symbol of Iran's monarchy during the Pahlavi era. You could see it on flags, on military insignia, and even on the currency. And up to today, it remains like a very powerful symbol of parts of the Iranian opposition, both inside Iran and abroad. And this opposition is certainly hearing the call. We could see Reza Pahlavi, the son of the late Shah, who now lives in the US and is seen as one of the most powerful figures of the Iranian opposition. He's issued a call on social media to overthrow, quote, the Islamic Republic through street protests and nationwide strikes. And whether or not that will play out is, of course, very much in the air, but because historically speaking, attacks on Iran have usually left people rallying around the flag. But with the level of protest against the Islamic Republic we've seen in the past years, it's hard to imagine that happening again. And apparently Iran's leadership now feels the same way, because we're getting the first reports from Iran that indicate that communication is cut for some users in the country. And that is what the Islamic Republic usually does if it fears protest.
That was DW's Iran expert, Theresa Tropper. Theresa, thanks for your insights. I'm now joined by Miri Eisin in Tel Aviv. She's a fellow at the International Institute for Counterterrorism at Reichman University in Israel, and also a former colonel in the Israel Defense Forces. Welcome to DW. We just heard a statement from the Israeli military a short time ago that the overnight strike on Iran was not a limited operation, but part of what it called a long-planned war effort. Is this the beginning of a full-blown regional war?
I don't know if I would call it a regional war, but it already right now is between Israel and Iran. And in between Israel and Iran, for Israel to get to Iran, for Iran to attack Israel, the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan, Iraq, Syria, those are countries that are along the way. They are going to be impacted by it no matter what. It was mentioned before that Jordan intercepted some of the Iranian UAVs, the drones that they fired against Israel after we attacked on one of the different stages. And that's because because it's on the way. If Iran flies drones towards Israel, they're going to fly over either Iraq or Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Syria. So yes, it's all within the region. Israel was very clear. Yes, this is the beginning of a war. I state that because we don't usually say that we're starting a war. Both the Prime Minister and the Chief of Staff of the military in these hours, as we're still attacking, have said we have started a war against the Islamic regime's capabilities, against their nuclear capabilities, against the platforms that they have. They have missiles that can reach Israel. By the way, those are missiles that can reach Berlin. They have a variety of capabilities, and those proxies in the area have all been supplied by that Islamic regime capability, and that's what's being attacked now.
Just how long has Israel been preparing for this?
I would say for years. That doesn't mean the specific attack as it happened today, June 13th, but Israel has been looking at the Iranian Islamic regime's quest for nuclear capability hand in hand with the Islamic regime's capabilities that already exist with the projectiles, as I said, ICBMs, intercontinental ballistic missiles, different types of UAVs. Most of the drone attacks that are taking place now in the Russia-Ukraine war are from the Iranian military industry. So Israel has been preparing to attack these different capabilities, assuming that there would be no resolution in any of the negotiations. But the negotiations were always about the nuclear aspect. It was never about the additional platforms. So we have been preparing this for years. I think that it was very much fine-tuned, if I can use that word, very targeted, very precise after the two exchanges that we had already against the Islamic regime of Iran in April of 2024 and in October of 2024. Iran attacked Israel twice then, the Islamic regime. Israel responded then. I think that we learned lessons, and here we are in June doing an overall clear-cut, as we've said, beginning of a war. This isn't over right now. It's not going to be done today. As we speak, Israel is still attacking different facilities. They haven't yet attacked all of the nuclear ones, but they're not only attacking the nuclear ones. They're attacking Iranian Revolutionary Guard. They're attacking anti-aircraft capabilities. They're attacking the ICBM, the missile sites, and the places of production. So it's a very vast attack that is still going on.
Israel's main ally, the United States, has been pushing for a diplomatic solution. President Trump saying he preferred that just a few days ago. So why has Israel decided to move ahead with this attack on Iran?
One of the challenges for me as an Israeli, I'm sitting now inside Tel Aviv, and I have great appreciation for everybody's opinions on different things. Khamenei, the supreme leader, every single week, and I follow him both in his tweets and what he says, it's always published a lot, every single week calls for the annihilation of the state of Israel. He doesn't call for the annihilation of Europe or Germany or the rest of the world, but he does call for our annihilation. That quest for nuclear weapons is the additional aspect on what they already have. As I said, the different platforms that are part of the Iranian military industry that can arrive in Israel. They already attacked, as I said, within April and October of last year. We've built a lot of interceptive defenses, but if you don't take care of what they've built there, I can't imagine anybody in the world wanting Iran, the Islamic regime, to have any kind of nuclear capability. That's a horrific idea. Why right now? I think it's the combination that Israel was looking and saying, we are going to go not just against the nuclear, but against the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, against the different platforms to really push the Islamic regime into a different place, which at the end I can hope will enable more negotiations and that the Islamic regime will not be, like North Korea, a breakout nuclear power. I think that that's good news, not just for Israel. I think that that's good news for the world.
That was intelligence and security expert Miri Eisin. We appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
And for some analysis, we can speak to Daniel Gerlach. He's a Middle East expert, journalist, and editor-in-chief of Zenith magazine. He joins us now from Paris. Welcome. Daniel, why did Israel decide to strike Iran now?
I think there's a number of political and military reasons. The military reason is that they simply had the opportunity to do so. Iran has been weakened constantly, mainly through Israeli military action in the region, with attacks on Iranian targets, but also on Iran's proxies, Iran's partners, allied militias in the region. And in the course of these attacks and the exchange of fire that happened in April and October last year between Iran and Israel, Israelis could test the capabilities, but also the inabilities of Iranian air defense. So this was an opportunity. But there is a political level to this, which I think is much more important. We all know about the nuclear talks that the Trump administration and the Iranians have been holding to no success, because they were trying to replicate somehow the nuclear agreement, the JCPOA, that was concluded in 2015, from which Trump withdrew shortly later. For Prime Minister Netanyahu, the situation in the Middle East is at the moment not going well for him, because there's a lot of public attention on his pointless, brutal war in Gaza. There's a lot of attention on the mass displacement of Palestinians and annexation and genocidal rhetoric from members of his coalition. So the criticism on Netanyahu has increased also in the Western camp. And for Netanyahu, he can be sure that the moment he escalates a war with Iran, a critical mass of Western allies that were about to distance himself from his policies will be with him and will be also forced to somehow unequivocally take sides. And that is a political game. Then you have the domestic policy, of course, where Netanyahu's approval rates are plummeting. And for Netanyahu, this is a war is a moment of, is like an instrument of choice in order to protect his political assets. He has proven that in the past. He was much more war averse in recent years, but since, let's say, October 7, he thinks that this is a chance to eliminate all strategic threats to Israel, and he considers himself a redeemer of his people.
Well, you mentioned that U.S. President Donald Trump had been calling for diplomacy with Iran, but is it likely that Israel launched its strikes against Iran without U.S. backing?
Well, it's kind of conspicuous how the Americans distant themselves, also, of course, with regard to their allies and clients in the Gulf region, the Arab Gulf states that have recently normalized with their relations with Iran, that have made it clear that they're not interested in any escalation. But we've seen that from Washington for like every time when such a situation emerges, they might be distancing themselves and may be critical, but in the end support the Israeli side in this. And when you hear Marco Rubio said like Iran should not retaliate, he talks about U.S. assets and U.S. interests in the region. Let's keep in mind that the Americans have evacuated non-essential staff from various of their embassies in the Gulf region. But he also implies that Iran should not retaliate against Israel, because in the case when it comes down to the critical moment, then America would probably side with Israel. This is a situation which is not comparable to Israel's precedent strike on a supposedly nuclear facility in 1981 against Iraq, where Israel, as they said, surgically struck at targets. Here, as your correspondent rightfully pointed out, they have not only attacked apparently military sites, but they have targeted leadership of the Iranian armed forces, the IRGC, and that is not a surgical strike, but that is an outright declaration of war against Iran. So in this situation, America has the chance to stand by Israel and to, when the situation escalates, support the Israelis, or they can say, okay, we will back them up, we will deliver arms, but we will not actively support them. But the moment that American assets in the region are targeted and hit, of course, America would be forced to react.
Well, Israel, of course, says it considers Iran's nuclear program to be an existential threat. Have these strikes been effective in setting back Iran's nuclear capabilities?
I cannot tell you. I have no assessment on, of course, the technical impact of these strikes. If you follow the Israeli press, there's those who say, well, it might be a success. There's others who say this is more of a political strike than a military one, which is not going to stop the Iranian enrichment capabilities. But that's something I cannot tell you. I think the political implications are much more important now than the actual military effect on the Iranian nuclear sites.
Well, Iran, for its part, has promised a harsh response to Israel's attacks. What could that look like?
Well, we've seen how Iran has responded in the past in a very limited fashion. They wanted to make sure when Israel struck their consulate general in Damascus or when Israel killed a high-ranking IRGC commander alongside Hassan Nasrallah last autumn in Beirut. They sent a combined attack of drones and cruise missiles and also ballistic missiles into the Israeli airspace to basically confuse the Israeli defense system. Most of these weapons were intercepted. It looked like, however, that also Iran gave them a warning. They informed the regional powers, they informed the United States, so Israel had time to prepare for this attack, which showed that Iran felt compelled to retaliate, but wanted to limit, of course, the amplitude of this, the magnitude of this. Now we have a different situation because this is a direct strike against the Iranian armed forces. So though the Revolutionary Guard has been struck and not the regular military, but still this is an attack on the Iranian armed forces. So Iran would have to respond in a much wider and much stronger fashion. However, it's going to be difficult for them because we have seen that the military capabilities are limited because Iran doesn't have an air force. It relies on drones and missiles technology in which they are advanced, but of course they're limited. So they used to recur to their militias and proxy partners in the region, the so-called axis of resistance, in some sort of a forward defense, but the Iranians don't have that capability anymore, for the exception of the Houthis probably in Yemen. And Israel is making use of that weakness before Iran builds up its capabilities again.
That was Daniel Gerlach. He's a Middle East expert, journalist, and editor-in-chief of Zenith magazine. Many thanks indeed for all of your insights.
Thank you.